Hi there, I'm Katie Cook from Portland's Culinary Workshop, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to cut up an onion. So I've got an onion right here. Just imagine that this were whole. The way that we get started is from a compost bowl. Imagine that the sprout is on, so sprout end, root end. The first thing you're going to do is cut off the sprout end. That way your onion can be flat. The number one way that we cut round objects is make them flat first. So that way they're not rolling around and dangerous. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right through the center of the root. So I want some of that root on both sides. That is what holds all the pieces of the onion together. And so it's going to make it a lot easier for me to cut this efficiently without then having to line up all my strips and go back through it again. Not only that, but it's going to make sure that all of those sulfur-based gases that make us cry are staying nice and inside the onion until the very end of our prep work. So once I'm here and your onion's in half and you've got a root end on there, do not cut it off. I know the first thing you want to do is cut off the root because it's dirty. Don't do that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off any funky looking skin. The skin of the onion is not going to break down in your food no matter how much you cook it. You could braise this for like 8 hours and you would still feel it in your mouth. And then if you have wonky pieces where like some of it is really thin and translucent and the rest of it, like, don't sacrifice safety to pinch pennies. You can still use this for stock, whatever you take off of it. And what I like to do is I'll freeze my vegetable scraps that I can use for stock, which is like carrots, celery, onions, parsnips, that kind of thing. I'll save them in a freezer bag in my freezer, and then when the gallon bag is full, that means it's time to make vegetable stock or chicken stock or whatever. So I'm not losing those. Those aren't trash, but I am making sure that I'm not, putting my fingertips in jeopardy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut in towards the center like a dial or a clock with the full length of my knife, and that's going to give us the most consistent cuts. If you cut straight up and down, you're going to have big fat pieces on the side and little skinny pieces in the middle. And the more consistently you're cutting things, the more consistently they're going to cook. Now, the curve of my knife, of my chef knife, is going to cradle the root. So I'm not cutting all the way through. I'm going to stop just short of that. So with my knife a little bit closer to me than normal, I've still got my guide hand always perpendicular to the blade. I'm going to cut in towards the center, going all the way to the edge without going through. In towards the center, in towards the center, in towards the center. Now that I'm here in the middle, you'll see that the back of my knife is flat against the board and the tip of my blade is way up and over the root. That's because if I stop back here, that's going to be that 2 inches or 1.5 inches on the front of the knife where the onion is still stuck together on the bottom side because it didn't go all the way down. So you want to make sure that you're like really up and over the root when you're doing this. Now I'm going to start to angle back towards the center, back towards the center, back towards the center. Now, when it gets scary for my guide hand, I'm getting a little too close for comfort, I'm just going to shift it here to the other side. I'm not cutting my hand, I'm still cutting towards the board, I'm just keeping the onion from shifting forward. So now I can do those last couple cuts. So from here, if I wanted fajita night, I would just cut off the root end, but I want to dice. I'm going to be using this to make a soup later. So I'm going to have my bear claw curled in that's holding all of those pieces together so they don't splay out and get weird. And then I'm going to land my plane. So the knife is parallel to the cutting board. The cut's on the forward and down motion away from me. And it's really important that you're pressing forward as you cut down. If you're just blunt forcing it, straight up and down, your food is going to kind of get smashed and splay out, and that's going to make things a little bit more dangerous. If you're sharpening your knife regularly and you feel comfortable doing that, you don't notice any difference, that's just fine. But most people aren't sharpening their knives on a regular enough basis to not let the knife do the work for them. So you don't have to press as hard and use as much force if you're using that forward motion as you cut. So forward and down, forward and down, forward and down, forward and down. When it starts to get a little bit sketchy for your guide hand again, back here towards the root, all these pieces are cut in towards the center. So if I put this down on the board, just flat right there, I can safely cut off all those extra pieces and I don't have to worry about getting too close to my hand. Not only that, now everything's cut in nice, consistent pieces. Thank you for joining me today. Feel free to reach out and ask questions on our Facebook page, and we look forward to seeing you in the shop soon.